Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another monthly national call from Mob United. We're so excited to have our guest here. I know, you all who have joined us over the past few years typically know that our June call, we usually give up our guest seat to a a gentleman, a father, and so we've got one here again today who's written a book that I've had the pleasure of reading, and I think it's a fantastic book that really needs to be shared with as many people as possible. Moms, dads, kids at of a certain age. I think it's a great tool for them. The name of Mark's book is Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons, and Broken Daughters, healing generational pain, which is so important. A lot of times we talk about, how important it is to try and break the cycle. And as our core group of moms know within the group, that we're always here to support each other and provide information that can help you navigate certain systems. And we often talk about our self care and how important it is to make sure that we're, you know, taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. But part of the things that we sometimes don't tap into is how our past and our parents' pasts can sometimes create generational trauma that's difficult for us to get through if we're not really investigating it. And this is what I think Mark's book does for us. It gives us an opportunity to kind of dive into that. And that's why we thought it would be great to have him on as a guest this month, in the month of June, which we will be celebrating Father's Day next Sunday. So we want to give a special shout out to all the dads that are joining the call today, and all the moms who make sure that you celebrate those dads as well. And so, with that, Mark, happy early Father's Day to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to share with you just a little bit of information on Mark and who he is before we dive into reading the first chapter from his book, Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons, and Broken Daughters. So Mark Momplaisir was born and raised outside of the city of, now Mark, you're going to have to help me with the name of the city.
It's Miragwan.
Thank you so much. I'll have to share with you what that sounds like in the Jamaican translation.
Got it.
Okay, so it's the beautiful suburb of Bilal, I think,
Miragwan.
Haiti. Yeah. He immigrated with his family to Boston, Massachusetts when he was a teenager. And for nearly 2 decades, Mark has been a wellness coach, a mental health advocate, serving clients ranging from 12 to 93 years young. His work has given him a clear understanding of how a lack of self awareness and self care can negatively impact one's health and relationships. Mark's commitment to raising his 5-year-old daughter to be emotionally, spiritually, and physically healthy inspired him to embark on his own healing journey. When not writing or exercising, Mark enjoys singing, dining, and especially chicken dishes, and having tea parties with his daughter. He has a BS in biology from Touro College, New York, where he is currently pursuing a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology. He also received a graduate certificate in patient care management from Alfred University in New York. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hello to everyone. Hello, Vanessa. It's good to see you. So happy to be here. We're gonna have a great conversation. Happy early Father's Day to all the fathers. Thank you to all the great moms, raising our sons and daughters to be awesome and amazing and great assets to society and to our communities. And I'm so again honored to be here. I can't wait to start having, some great conversations and talk about the book and how I decided to write the book and why. So
You
thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And I remember when I first told Apelsha about you and she saw your name and she said, "Is that really his name? Like, really? His last name is Momsplasir." I was like, "Yeah." And she thought that that was interesting, obviously, because of our organization and the name of our
Right.
organization and how intimately it's linked. But you touched on, in your bio, talking about self awareness and self
Right.
care. The self-care part we often tap into here at Mob United. As a matter of fact, last month
Mhm.
for Mental Health Month, we did a whole campaign that was led by the wonderful Kimberly Robinson, who leads our, I would say, our health and wellness initiatives.
Yeah,
And so we always take care of that part, but the self-awareness part is something that I feel we sometimes need to tap into a little bit more. So I'm really excited to share this book. And once we're done with this, ladies, we'll make sure that we share a link of where you can get Mark's book in the chat on Facebook Live so that you can grab a copy of your own. Okay, so we're going to do a little story time for you all, starting with chapter one of Mark's book, and I'm going to ask Mark to read for us.
absolutely. All right. So, first chapter of the book. Again, I wrote the book because personally, I wanted to, embark on my own healing journey, my own exploration and awareness journey. So I decided to research on how to embark on that road, and based on all the information people I've talked to, I had a therapist I was communicating with, and that actually helped a lot just to kind of get into your own history and understanding why you make certain decisions and why certain things happened and why you allow them to happen, and what state of mind you're in for them to happen. So after all that, I decided to write the book. And again, I always like to share this story about the African experience chapter. I took a course in college in undergrad that actually really opened my eyes because as African descent individuals, we're not really taught about the history of how we interact with each other, what happened post-slavery or even during slavery. A lot of us don't understand the depth of what really happened. So that opened my eyes. Again, it just made me appreciate everyone who actually are part of that history, who went through it, and just opened my heart to really learn how to love one another, how to love them, how to appreciate them, and how to heal together. So the first chapter of the book is called African Experiences. And we'll start reading. Again, as Vanessa said, we'll have a conversation after this first section I'm going to be reading. It is difficult to know what came first, the mindset and modern misfortune that we were born into, or the results of our long-lived captivity that got us to where we are as children of Africa. I recall taking an African American experience course in college that shook my mind, body, and soul. Being from the Caribbean, my knowledge about slavery was limited to what our colonizers taught us. We were taught that Haiti was discovered by the exploiter Christopher Columbus, and how we fought the French and became independent. But the understanding of how we became who we are, including how we love and treat one another, weren't lessons from our history, but from those who invaded our country. The truth is that living in bondage for hundreds of years affected us, producing psychological trauma that is still with us. Our self-destructive mindsets, our unhealthy habits, our inconsistent cultural patterns, our strengths, our weaknesses all exist in the basic foundation of our fundamental teachings, traditions, and generational patterns, which many of us find ourselves fighting to break away from. Our psychological suffering in the Americas and nearly every African descent country is proof that the damaging effect of slavery is far greater than we can ever imagine. All right.
That's Yeah, that in itself is a whole bit. I've often shared with folks that I do truly believe that the trauma of slavery is
Mm-hmm.
something that is a part of our DNA.
Right.
I apologize for the background noise. We've got some kids hanging out in the pool, but as you guys know, we often have kids around here. So, anyway, yeah, I really think that. But it's a subject that's not talked about very often. The
Right.
fact that there is um, trauma that is embedded, if you will, in our DNA. Not that I think that it's something that we should dwell on, because I don't. I believe that sometimes we can hinder ourselves when we dwell on the negative things. But I also think that it's a matter of understanding, who we are, and
Right.
and if we can have an understanding of the kinds of trauma that is embedded in us, then we can work to kind of combat the effects
Definitely.
of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, when I learned about, everything that happened, even things that are, currently happening right now, it's not for me to get angry about. It's not for me to get mad, but it's for me to understand, what this was the process, right? This was what happened. This was what we went through. And because of it, I've learned to love, right? Another African descent person, because I know we went through a lot. Right, I know we
Exactly.
endured. Our ancestors endured a lot. A lot of our brothers and sisters are still enduring a lot. So it's just, it encourages me. It pushes me to get closer to us, right? To our communities, to come together and, pretty much heal together and understand our experiences and why we are, a lot of us are the way we are, and why a lot of our parents teach their children the way they do, because that's just what they know.
Right. And what's really key about something that you just said, it's like, um, when you do have that understanding of what we went through
Mhm.
together as a people,
Right,
you should hope that it brings us closer together. It
right,
allows us to respect each other in a different way. It allows us to consider ourselves as kinfolk, if you will, and treat each other differently with a little
right.
bit more kindness and empathy. So the more I think we spread the understanding of how important it is to get to the base of your roots and understand where we come from, I think maybe that's one of the ways that we can help to combat some of the negative things that happen in our various communities.
Absolutely. No, I really hope so, and I honestly believe that it's going to happen. I think the more we have conversations about it, the more we teach our children about, our history, about their history, about what happened to our ancestors. So they can have a deeper understanding of, why, we're seeing a lot of things right now. Why in a lot of our communities, we don't have that sense of unity. We don't
Right,
have that sense of togetherness where we can create and build and understand each other, and love and have healthy family dynamics. So I
right,
think, definitely teaching, the younger generation, and have conversation with even the older generation, just to kind of talk about it, because a lot of people just choose not to talk about it. It's a painful thing, right?
yeah,
It was a painful experience. And even now, seeing that we can't, we can't have what we really want to have, right? Because we have to fight for it. For a
right,
lot of things we want to have, we have to fight for, pretty much acceptance and equality and freedom
right,
and financial stability. For a lot of us, we still have to fight to get that. So it's hard to always have that conversation, especially if it makes you angry,
right,
rightfully so. You know
right,
what I mean? So for me, when I started doing research, my understanding changed, because getting angry is one thing, but
right.
understanding it is another. And
Mm.
I believe that the more you understand the history, the more you can learn from it.
Speaking of understanding, I'll dive into this second um, section of this chapter that is on self understanding, and I'll
Yeah.
read the section for us. So, the history of the African people began with exploitation, kidnapping, and slavery. During slavery, African descent mothers, fathers, and children were not allowed to live together and have family traditions such as dinner, stories, and other gatherings, because they were the property of their masters. Men would work in the fields from sunup to sundown, 7 days a week, barely fed, beaten, dying from illnesses and hunger, while the women were domestic workers taking care of the children, cleaning and cooking, being sexually exploited, and forced to be impregnated by their own sons and relatives for the purpose of producing more slaves. For hundreds of years, African descent men, women, and children were auctioned to other slave owners as laborers and tools beaten, and abused continuously. The life that our ancestors were brought into had to be endured, and many died knowing there was no end in sight for the children they left behind. African descent men felt powerless and useless because they were unable to defend their women and children against the brutality of their masters. Witnessing their entire family begging for mercy while being raped and demoralized day in and day out, and not being able to help was physically, spiritually, and psychologically destructive. Imagine watching your beautiful African descent queens being used as exhibits and experiments, treated mercilessly, and there was absolutely nothing you could do to put an end to it. But you got through it. You endured it. You survived it. You, African descent kings, never had a chance to become men because you were seen as boys, peasants, inferior animals. You held on to your anger and pain because you couldn't stand up to your masters, look them in their eyes, and show them how you really felt. And if one of you had ever had the courage to protest, you'd be hanged, sodomized, beaten, whipped, or killed. Our ancestors went through this, whether it was in Haiti, Jamaica, or the United States. The physically strong African descent kings got through these dark times. You endured days, weeks, and months chained up in ships, sailing across the Atlantic Ocean, hungry, sick, stolen from your family and your loved ones, not knowing where you were going and how bad your life was going to be. You breathed through that. Then one day, you were told by society you needed to be a man. It didn't matter if you were 12 or 50 years old, you were expected to be a man. From the ashes of your ancestors, who were never taught what it meant to be a man, you were expected to protect, provide, and take care of your family. When you no longer worked the fields and the African descent women and children were no longer the property of their masters, you refused to be the little boy that you were still called, even if you were nearly 60 years old. With no education and no skills other than plantation labor, and with no land or property of your own, your women, daughters, and sons became your responsibility. It was up to you now, African descent man, to embark on this new journey of being a free man with nothing. It was you, African descent boys, who endured the pain and confusion of seeing the men who were supposed to be your role models tossed away. You were left wondering if your life would be different. It was you, African descent woman, who found yourselves raising families you didn't create on your own, taking on the responsibility to protect and provide for them, in spite of the lack of resources. African descent girls felt empty and wounded because they too deserved to feel the love of their fathers and mothers that they couldn't dare to ask for. But somehow, some way, you made it through, broken and shattered, lost and filled with despair, fighting for what was right, beaten for being alive, spat on because of the color of your skin, dying for freedom, shamed in a place you never asked to be brought to, but you were still alive, striving, fighting, and hoping to one day be seen for the gift that you truly are. Powerful section.
Yeah, sorry, I have some noise in the background. New York City noise. Uh, um, yeah, it's crazy. Every time I hear someone read that section, I have to hold back tears. Um, even talking to clients, I have 80 something year old clients who talk about hearing their parents fighting, right? And that's something they were never able to get over. At 80 something. So to think back about on over 400 years of that treatment, it's not something you can wake up one day and say, I'm over it, right? That's traditions and years and generations of abuse and pretty much watching your loved ones getting mistreated and not able to say stop, not able to walk up to whoever's, doing the abuse and say, this is enough. You didn't have that luxury. So, and in that process, the connection that we had with each other, that bond, it was broken. It was lost. And I don't think it was something we ever got back. I don't think it was something we ever even addressed, because again, we had so much to fight for. We had so much fighting to do. Creating that bond it would have been a privilege, right? Even though it would have been the basic foundation of how we needed to move forward healthily, but we weren't aware of it. So I think at this point that we're here now, and we're able to have these kind of conversations. I think it's time we work on that bond. I think it's time we work on creating and building that connection, even with our children. So they can have a chance to grow up understanding what it really means to be loved in a healthy way, what it
Right.
means to start creating generations of healthy, emotionally, spiritually, physically individuals, and not think, what, I have to, this is for me. I'm doing this for me. It's all about me. We have to start learning how to be about us
Right.
collectively. So I think, yeah, I mean, this is such a profound section. And again, like, I hear it, it saddens me, because I can't imagine having, gone through something like that, and
Right.
and and not, you can't even dream of, that ever ends,
Yeah.
because
It,
it's
it
what you know.
it definitely leaves a lump in my throat whenever I read that section
Yeah,
and hear it. And you say something that is so important. So, and I don't know if this is a cultural thing, but I've always thought about, the different ways in which parents and children share affection.
yeah,
Specifically because I'm Jamaican, grew up obviously in a Jamaican household, and have family members, same, similar. And what I noticed, my parents, I'm first generation. When I look at generation versus first generation, there seems to be a little bit more connectivity in terms of affection between second generation West Indians versus first generation. So
absolutely.
I um, I never doubted that my parents loved me, right? I never
Right,
doubted that my mom loved
right.
me.
Yeah.
But I used to watch my friends interacting with their parents, my American friends interacting with their parents, and saw a lot of, displays of affection between them. But I never actually really experienced a lot of that myself growing up.
Hmm. Hmm.
I didn't live in a household where you get a kiss before you walk out the door every day.
Right. Yeah.
In my household, though, that is the case. My kids can't leave the house without me grabbing them, hugging them, and kissing them. And I
Mm.
think part of the reason why I do that, I'm overtly affectionate with them, is because I didn't receive
Right.
that growing up. And so when we're talking about, again, like that self-awareness, I was aware of how that affected me. I
Yeah.
was aware of the fact that not having that um, did something to me in a sense, you know what I mean? And it did something with the way that I related to other people. So I embrace other people fully all the time
Right.
because I think we all need love and we all need a little bit of affection, right? And I think that kids particularly need to feel that. It helps them feel secure in who they are, helps them feel loved just in general, to
Yeah.
hear it and to see it and to feel it more so than just to know it because you've got a roof over your head and shoes on your feet, food in your body. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny you say that. I had a conversation with my mother recently. She's very affectionate towards my daughter. And I asked him, like, when I was growing up, I never, you never, told me you loved me. um, she had me when she was 15, so she was pretty much a kid herself. She said, I didn't even know what love was when I was growing up. That hit me. I mean, that hate deep, because it doesn't mean that she didn't love me, but her not even knowing what it was, it's I had no words. I had no words, and that made me appreciate her so much more. That made me want to just love on her so much more, because she needs it, right? Because she had to go through, childhood of not even um, knowing, that love existed. Her parents provided for her. My grandfather was a great man. My grandmother was amazing. They worked. My grandfather was a farmer, but to him, like, work was life. And I remember, because I grew up with my grandparents until I was about 9, and to him, like, you have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, take care of the animals and the farms. That was just what life was about. As far as like loving and showing appreciation, like, that's just not a thing. As long as you provide and protect, then life is great,
Right.
right? But again, having that awareness now, understanding that, okay, well, that was what we were taught during slavery.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't taught about, having family values, loving each other, even taking time to have conversation just to hear each other out. That was
Mm-hmm.
not a thing,
Wow.
right? So, you grow up pretty much just having to work,
Right.
right? And as the women, you grow up, well, you take care of the, of your master's children, right? That was just what life was about. So we've been passing all those, detrimental patterns and then traditions down from, from generations to generations, but not understanding, not being aware of the damage that is done to our own communities. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So again, just having these conversations and being aware of, where we came from, right? A lot of the things that we do, why,
Mm-hmm.
where did they start, right? And how, like, now that we understand them, how do we break those patterns, right?
Right.
Those generational patterns, how do we move away? How do we move past them? And I think that's what the book is about.
Right, right, right. So we
Yeah,
share that. We share something in common then, I guess, because I too, in realizing that my own mom did not really receive that
yeah,
when she was younger as well. Since I think since I've had my kids, I've been overtly affectionate with my mom as well. I will force her to say "I love you" before she gets off the phone. She's not
yeah,
getting off the phone,
yeah.
and when I'm with her, I'm just like all over her, giving her big, huge
Right.
hugs,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
just giving her the love that that I wish she had when she was growing up,
Right.
the affection that I wish she had when she was growing up, and that I wish that I had received with her. And it's funny because I feel like when you do that, when you exchange that exchange that kind of emotion and affection to each other,
Yeah,
as from parent, parent to child, child to parent, there's a little bit of disarming and allowing you to kind of take away the armor that we use
absolutely. Absolutely.
to
Yes.
protect us. And I
Yeah,
think I'd love if you could pick this up with the next section on discernment.
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. So our disarmament. When we think of being disarmed, most of us automatically think of battlefields, wars, and demilitarization. We think of being stripped of our powers, weapons, and being neutralized. But in our communities in African descent countries, the disarmament of our African descent families was the residual servitude mindset that came from a lack of knowledge of our history and self-worth. Weaponizing ourselves for our own self destruction was the tactic used by our oppressors. We have been divided and conquered by the attitude that we are and have always been inferior to European and Western civilization. In spite of our advancement in arts, technology, medicine, and astronomy prior to Western civilization, somehow we have been convinced that to see past our greatness. We were taught that our complexion, our hair, our noses, our bodies, and our minds were inferior. We have been so discombobulated by Western civilization, blinded by materialistic fantasies, that we have lost sight of our ethical values, traditions, and belief systems that our ancestors stood and died for. Be it Africa, Haiti, or any other African offspring countries, we have been used and exploited for our own self-obliteration, killing ourselves, hating each other, hating ourselves, and pulling each other down for reasons that serve none of us. We have been used against ourselves because of our weaknesses and need for equality. I recall a conversation I had with a colleague about the structural paradigm of many African descent families. For as long as I can remember, the belief among our families is that the woman is always right. The woman is always right. While some of you might disagree, I've always believed this was an insult to smart, emotionally mature women as a whole. To think and say that someone is always right is like saying that she's not emotionally established enough to understand or handle viewpoints that differ from her own. I have seen African descent men who would rather be yes dear type of men in order to maintain the peace in their household, which again reinforces the belief that women cannot reason and should be avoided rather than disagree with them and or get on their bad side. As a result, we have created traditions and cultures that have led to our own destruction. One of the goals of our oppressors was to keep African descent families divided by breaking down the man's spirit and giving the women a sense of control, creating a domineering matriarchal system, which they have no respect for, serves the agenda of women being in control, break down, kill, and imprison the African descent men, and let their sons grow up in households without fathers in the belief that mothers don't need them. But what we have been creating is a cycle of self-destruction. I'm not disparaging mothers who have persevered despite the cards they have been dealt and the cultures that have been created for them. But if we can't pause and look at ourselves in the mirror, take accountability for our own shortcomings and our own ignorance, we'll keep creating generations of men that our daughters will need to run for cover from. Men who have no idea what their true purpose is and what being a man should be. We'll keep raising men who will continuously find themselves too busy fighting to be loved and accepted by the women they choose while missing out on their life's purpose. Generations of men who have no idea how to be responsible men, fathers, and companions will continue to raise sensitive and charismatic men who know how to love every woman they set eyes on, but have no idea how to love and respect one woman. We'll keep raising men who have no idea how to be leaders, innovators, and providers. We'll raise men who will endlessly pay for their father's sins, men who will refuse to be like their fathers, but have no idea how to be anything or anyone else. Likewise, we'll keep raising generations of women who keep getting hurt and broken by the thinking that it is normal to create this imbalanced family dynamic of raising sons and daughters on their own and continue to create generations of wounded and fragile children. Women who keep getting hurt by the same men they were raised by, that by the same men that were raised by them, and continue to say there are no good men, but fail to accept that those men didn't raise themselves. We'll keep raising women who will keep raising daughters to be like their mothers, broken and blinded by their mother's pain. We'll keep raising women who have no clue what it means to be a woman because their mothers didn't know how to teach them. And because we are not being taught what a family structure should be, we'll continue to be at the bottom of society, where we are disrespected, killed, imprisoned, hurt, and broken. If we are not willing to create healthy family paradigms, if we are too busy fighting one another and blaming each other for the things that most of us have no idea how to do, we'll never unite, we'll never gain enough courage to create our own paths, voices, markets, plans, lifestyles, and productive communities. If as parents, we are not willing to teach our sons and daughters what it means to be men and women, we'll always find ourselves lost and confused and quick to follow everything that is trending or popular. This is not an attack on the African descent woman or the African descent man. It's a revolution. It's a revelation of our demise as the African descent people, a call for healing and restoration. We've created a matriarchal dynamic where strong women are raising strong girls who don't need men, but those same men are raising those same women are raising sensitive boys to grow up to be men who depend on the women who don't need them. Boys who grow up doing everything to impress the same women who don't need them, spending time and energy trying to impress them because we're not being taught how to love each other. We're raising men who are more concerned with flashy rims and shiny jewelry than standing up for a cause of humanity. We are raising men that our daughters will call ain't shit man, sorry for the curse, and deadbeat dads, partly because we're not willing to face our reality. We're too afraid to hurt each other's feelings by acknowledging that children need their fathers as much as they need their mothers. So we encourage dysfunctional behaviors and refuse to take accountability. As men, we've chosen to be more concerned with being liked and accepted, profiting off of saying what sounds good and pretty to the ears, and leaving our African descent women to raise our children alone. Until we face that reality, until we're no longer afraid to take accountability and responsibility for ourselves, respect will never be earned. Until we understand the role of our men and our men, our women, our mothers, and our fathers, nothing will ever change. It's time to start seeing each other differently if we want things to change. If we want our sons and daughters to have a better shot at being emotionally and spiritually healthy, whole, respected, and heard. If we want our children to stand up for causes that make our society better, not just for themselves, but for future generations to come, we need to create a better dynamic for them to model. We need to teach by example.
And we need to get Mark's book into every school that we can so that our kids can learn this ASAP. I mean, woo, do you guys see the reason why I had to have Mark on today? Um, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Um, I think one of the beauties of this Facebook group is that we have all different kinds of moms in here. And obviously our main sole goal is to ensure that our sons, or do everything that we can to ensure that our sons survive and thrive. It's something that we say all the time.
yeah,
But our moms come from different backgrounds, areas, cultures, and it's interesting because I think a lot of them, go through a lot of the things that you're sharing here. And due to that, there are differences in opinions and in
yes,
values. But the interesting thing is that I think this is all something that we all need to hear and have a reminder of on a regular basis, because we have got to change the course of
absolutely,
direction. When you
absolutely.
really look at, young men, I want to say between, for me anyway, from what I've seen, between the ages of, like, 18 up to about 26, 27, there's a section of these young men that to me feel like a generation who feels unheard, unappreciated, underloved, and all of those things those traits that you're speaking of, saying things so that they are liked, being really flashy, doing things to impress women. I find a lot of that within that generation, and they're missing a lot of the core values, even, God forbid, I've seen this, even coming from parents who are present and proactive and share, their moral stance. You still find a lot of these young men, young people in general, that lost.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of them are hurting.
Right.
Let's say that. A lot of them are hurting. And when you said before about different opinions, um, I remember sharing on Facebook actually this story about how a lot of African descent boys um, are just broken, right? And someone said, no, you can't make that general statement because my sons are not broken. um I had to say it's not about you, right? uh just because something is not part of your history doesn't mean that it's not somebody else's, right? When I came here to the state in 1999, I moved to Mattapan in Boston with my parents. And I remember, I mean, just how violent it was. There was this in the 90s and even early 2000s, how gangs were, right? You look at another black man or black boy, um, they want to stab you, right? And I talk about that too. Like when you so far, uh, uh, you know, on the spectrum of being hurt, somebody looks at you, you think they automatically see your flaws, right? You think they automatically see your brokenness. You think what they looking at is the hurt that you're going through. So a lot of our black men, black boys are going through that, right? Because we don't, like you said, we don't feel heard. We don't feel accepted. We don't feel like we belong. Even here, myself as as an adult, when we talk about interaction with the police, if I hear sirens behind me, I get nervous, right? So it's almost like a lot of our black men and black boys are living on edge. We're constantly living in trauma because we just never know when something bad is going to happen to us. So with that said, we need our families, right? We need our parents. We need our support system. We need, just to have this surrounding of love and understanding and acceptance, because a lot of times when we step out there, we don't get it, right? And we can't let our sons and daughters depend on friends to raise them. And I remember again coming here, um I made a lot of friends that I'm not saying I wish I didn't, but I saw a lot of things I wish I didn't because of those friends, right? I have friends who went to prison for life because they didn't have guidance, they didn't feel loved, right? They didn't feel accepted, so they felt like they had to do what they had to do to survive. And that's another thing too. I mean, I know you said that earlier, for our boys to survive. I want us to get to a point where we're not surviving, right? I want us to get to a point where we're not living in survival mode. I want us to flourish. I want us to love. I want us to, to have just loving, understanding interaction with one another, where we're not thinking, well, the moment I walk out the door, I don't know who's gonna rob me, right? I don't know who I'm gonna have to fight. You know what I mean? Depending on where you are, which neighborhood you're in. I don't know if a stray bullet is gonna fly and hit me. You know what I'm saying? So my hope, and honestly, my purpose with this book is to help all of us to get to a point where we're so aware of what's going on collectively in our communities. I'm not talking about, if you this one, if you that person who's fortunate enough to not having to go through what the rest of the people in our communities are going through. And I think it still relates to you, because when people look at you, they still see us. You know what I mean? So I think we all have to be honest with ourselves, whether we're living it or we're not. We have to come together and help each other heal. We have to come together and create this collective image and understanding that, what, we're in this together.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter who you are. If we look alike, if it doesn't matter if we had the same experience, if it doesn't matter if we can relate to each other's experiences, but we all have some level of, dysfunctions and trauma and pain that we're dealing with. And until we're able to, be honest and hold each other accountable and responsible for what we go through, it's going to be hard to make the change.
Absolutely. We definitely have to tap into, and it's challenging because I feel as though this subject, this topic of emotional intelligence and even saying the words empathy and just like those and psychological health, that's not something that we really talk about as Black people.
Not at all.
It's not something that we work on. I mean, it's happening more frequently now.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, because we have a number of advocates out there in the world that are speaking on it regularly. I tap into Black Girl Therapy because I think it's important for us to connect with and talk with people who have a similar understanding of what it's like um, to be Black in America.
Right.
So I feel like from a psychology and perspective and a counselor perspective, I think the best people who are set up to guide you are ones that understand, truly understand what your experience is. So I'm so grateful that there are more advocates out there in the world right now that are speaking about this on a regular basis. Um,
Absolutely.
let's continue. I'll read this next section on our disengagement. So, in Mark's words, when I envision what my people went through, I can see and feel their pain. I empathize with the psychological brokenness children of Africa endure. I imagine myself in a place that is filled with evil and darkness, cruelty and abuse. Endless suffering that would eventually break down the sanctified bond between the African descent man and the African descent woman. Even after the uh, even after the abolition of slavery, the black codes and Jim Crow segregation continued to keep you dejected. Despite getting you up on your feet, educating yourselves, creating businesses, and providing for your family, the oppressors came along and destroyed your efforts, burned down your homes, killed your families, and stopped you from voting and holding public office. You were controlled and manipulated by a system that was never designed to serve you. Kings and queens became three-fifths of a person with no human rights and no way to provide for themselves and their families. The African descent woman and the African descent man found themselves unable to make sense of their new life. The African descent woman had to keep working for pennies or food as a housekeeper, a maid, and a servant because the African descent man couldn't make enough to care for his family as a sharecropper. Like many of my African descent brothers, I worry about not being able to provide and protect for myself and my family, and it hurts deeply. It's in a man's genetic material to protect and provide for his family, but the African descent man was failing at both. You, the African descent queen, became the main and sometimes the sole breadwinner in the family. But you were busy raising your oppressor's children. You had no time to raise your own. And dad was never taught about raising children. All he knew was working the fields. So your children were raising themselves with little guidance, no education, no proper home training, and no one to model what love and family should be like. Once again, you face the cycle of destruction passed down from generation to generation. And as time went by, poverty and hunger conquered the African descent communities. The same system that convinced the African descent woman that the African descent man was useless pretended to be the salvation of the African descent communities. The welfare system, which included public housing projects, essentially encouraged the African descent woman to get rid of the African descent man if she and her children were to be eligible for those public assistances. It was another way to disarm the African descent family and gain control of their communities, alienate the men, give the children no options and opportunities for a better life. If the African descent man can't provide and protect, what good is he to the woman and the children? The system is ready to help as long as they maintain control. We'll give you assistance, but the African descent man in your life has got to go.
This destructive cycle has kept the African descent man unemployed, uneducated, lost, and frustrated. The self hate, the defeat, and the frustrations are pervasive. Families are vulnerable because dad has left us alone, or he was a nobody, as was made to believe. But you, African descent man, are equally alone, searching for a way to survive, to allegedly protect those projects, to keep everyone at bay. Cops patrol the projects, but instead of protecting the community, the police are there to protect others from you. If you act up out of anger and frustration, their job is to quickly remind you of who you are and where you belong. You get arrested and thrown in jail and become a felon. And as a criminal, your chance of finding a job has become drastically diminished. And there goes your future and the future of your sons following in your footsteps. Mama can't teach her sons to be men, so their friends did. Now mom is forced to become strong because she has to play the roles of mom and dad. She becomes the protector and provider, the counselor and caregiver, but she never has the chance to heal her own wounds. Your son becomes defeated because there is no way out, and nothing he does at this point will change the course of his destiny. By the time he reaches manhood, he becomes tired and fed up. As an adolescent, he thinks he knows what it means to be a man, and he starts displaying attributes of what he thinks a man is and does. He starts finding ways to survive and making a living with all the guns that are being brought into this community. He might start selling drugs and that were brought into this community by the very people who have abused and oppressed his ancestors. Many youths find themselves hanging with a group of friends who share their hurt, their understanding of what being a man is all about. They believe that they are becoming real men by being destructive and dysfunctional. Those who do not end up dead or in jail might be pushed out of their community by gentrification. Our daughters become broken watching mommy work multiple jobs, selling her soul, and still struggling to make ends meet. They are hurt and frustrated, knowing it shouldn't have to be mom's job to raise them alone, all alone. Depression, lack of self esteem, emptiness, suicidal thoughts, promiscuity, and drugs are part of their world. And the question that keeps running through your mind is, where's daddy? So they replace daddy with another defeated boy who never had a chance to be a boy, who grew up too fast. A defeated boy who now thinks he's a man. And they produce more broken girls than defeated boys. And so the cycle of strong women, fed up men, broken girls, and defeated boys continue.
Yeah.
Whew.
Um,
That was tough.
yeah. Yeah, it was. It in the 60s, um, you know, even, New York, let's talk about, the North, um, pretty much had a rule of no man in the house, right? So they would make random visits. Uh, when they started providing, social welfare assistance to African families, African descent families. Um, so a lot of men got put out, pushed out pretty much. So a lot of kids grew up watching that, right? Um, so, come the 70s and the 80s, uh, a lot of drugs, a lot of guns. In the 90s, um, a lot of that generation was even more lost. And that's when a lot of, you know, just detrimental uh, actions and habits started in our communities, right? A lot of gangs, a lot of violence, because they didn't have any guidance. And so when we talk about, okay, well, now if I'm able to make some money and sell drugs and make some money, that's what I'm gonna do, right? And when you see, the drug dealer in the neighborhood, he's living, right? The cars, the women, to a lot of them, that was just what success was. So a lot of them aspire to be that kind of successful. So it's hard I was part of a panel recently, and some of the guys were talking about how it was the women's fault, uh, because they put the man out in the '60s, um, and a lot of our kids grew up without fathers. I disagree. If we keep blaming the other person, um, we're never gonna get anywhere, right? Because if you look at, I don't want to go too far in history, but if you look at, even in the '50s and the '40s, yes, we had stronger family dynamics, but those families also raised, you know the kids that grew up in the '60s, right? So they raised them broken. They raised them without necessarily having the options, because I mean they really didn't have the options. They had, the communities, they had the togetherness, but that togetherness was dysfunctional. So moving forward in the '60s and '70s, so those, you know, children or those adults, they were broken too. They didn't know about healing. They didn't know about self-awareness. They didn't know about anything that was happening, but what they were given. So, if you can intentionally choose, right, to break down your family because of financial gain, it's not something that's healthy. And for anyone to be able to be put in that position to actually respond to it, something wasn't right, right? Like you,
Right.
you weren't looking at the hurt that was going to be caused by that action, because you weren't in a state of mind to see it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
understanding the position that they were in, when you have your children, you want them to be provided for. You want them to be taken care of. So if I, again, I'm not making excuses for one side and blaming the other side, but I want us to understand what position we were in, right?
Right.
If the women didn't have a choice, because they had to, again, care for the children, um, I can understand that decision,
But
right?
Mark,
Mhm.
sorry to cut you off, but it just dawned on me that this act of having to choose to break apart your family, or
Right.
not even choosing, but being forced to
Exactly.
break apart your family for
Right.
the sake of your ability to just live,
Yeah.
has been something that we've been dealing with
I know.
from the beginning.
Right. Right. It is. It is. And I think, again, no one is gonna give us, right? We have to start creating our own. Again, it's nothing, again, against, that system that was created not to benefit us, but it's on us. We this is an internal conversation, right? This is an inside conversation where we have to come together and decide how we're going to choose to move forward, based on looking at, based on the past. You know what I'm saying? Without blaming anyone, without, dwelling in the past, without holding on to whatever happened in the past. How can we understand it and move forward? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's where we need to start. That's where we need to just take that first step, and pretty much understanding, what, we all went through it. It's not because somebody chose to do it, we didn't have a choice. We didn't have options. You know what I'm saying? We started, I mean, I wouldn't even call it the bottom. We started under the bottom, right? So to be here and not understanding that we came from that far, you're not going to understand how to move past right now. You know what I'm saying? So we have to, again, come to a place where we create understanding, where we create awareness, where we create healing, right? Just creating a safe space for each other so we can grow together.
Very valid points. So now we know what our history is. We have a better understanding of what our history is.
Right.
Um, I feel like, and we discuss it very often.
Mhm.
and I've shared with you that, one of my favorite quotes is from Marcus Garvey: "A tree without knowledge of its roots, you know, I can't even remember the quote now. It's ridiculous, but has if you don't have knowledge of your roots, you can't, really move on in your futures." And so we talk about it often, but aside from talking about our past and aside from reliving our history, um, I think what I want to know is your thoughts on how do you take that history then, right,
Right.
and apply it to our present and our future
That's
in
right.
ways that will help our sons do, and us as a people in general, do the one thing that you said that we shouldn't be doing, not just surviving, but to
Right.
thrive.
Right.
How do we get to that place where we're thriving?
I think we have to continue the conversation, right? Now let's say we get to the point where we're talking about it, we understand it, right? The conversation has to continue in a direction where we start creating understanding between parents and children, right? Because the next generation, this generation, past generation, we can still come together and work together. Um, I understand the struggle, the financial struggle, right? But that's not gonna solve our problem. Unfortunately, we need more than that because somebody can have $1 billion today and does nothing for our communities, right? So we need to start educating the youth. We need to start having conversation and teach them early on that it is indeed about communities, right? It's not just about you becoming successful for you, but it's about using that whatever gifts that you have, use it for a greater purpose, right? Use it for the greater good of building communities, of building somebody else, of helping somebody else, of helping your communities. So I think, where we really need to, now, having the awareness is great, but taking that awareness and start acting on it, start creating, start helping, start having conversation with, other youth, right? Start having conversation with another boy. You know what I'm saying? Start having conversation with a friend. I talk a lot about purpose in the book. Understanding what your purpose is. It's not just to get money. It's not just to get rich. It's not just to get women as a man or a boy. It's to create something that's gonna help all of us. It's to again create something that's going to change somebody else's world. So I think the direction again that we need to focus on is how we're going to start building strong family dynamics. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to live together. I understand that sometimes situations happen and we're not going to have two parents living in the same household, but as a parent you have to be involved in your kid's life, right? You have to create that emotional balance that both of you, the man and the woman, dad and the mom, give to that kid. You know what I'm saying? Because if we don't have that, we're gonna have to stick to keep, I mean, continuously battle our own, demons. And I think that's one thing we have to understand. A lot of times we grow up, we're so busy, right? When we get to the point where we could actually create something and build something, but we fighting so many hurt. We're fighting with so many, just detrimental traditions and patterns and habits that we learn from our parents. We can't even focus on doing something constructive because we in so much pain. So I think we have to, again, us parents, we have to heal ourselves if we want, to give our children healthier patterns to follow. If we want to raise them, to be emotionally, physically, spiritually healthier, we as parents have to have that first.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? And all of us have to have it so we can collectively, build our communities in the way that's going to serve, not just one family, not just one person, but all of us.
Right. Right. You touch on some really key points there, and I'm seeing some questions popping up in the chat, and I think this would be a really great time for me to share some of these questions. So I'm not going to do it in order. I'm just going to go by the ones that I'm seeing first, and I think this would be interesting. Let's see. This question is, how do we have, and this is a very pertinent question, how do we have the conversation about generational wealth along with this conversation about community? Do you think that they have to be mutually exclusive?
Not necessarily. I think, we have to, I think we have to address generational health first. Um, as important as it is to be, to have the generational wealth, but the wealth is a tool, right? The wealth is a tool. And if you're not healthy enough to use it, to build it, to create it, to pass it down, it's going to be hard to maintain and it's going to change you. So I think it's important to talk about the generational health, early on, to raise our children with that mindset of being emotionally healthy, understanding what finance is. It's a tool. It doesn't define you. It doesn't make you who you are. You have to be who you are based on your own, your family values, based on tradition, based on your own cultural traditions. And with that, when you have that tool, which is the finance, then you can, you will know how to use that tool. You will know what to do with it. You will understand that it's not just about, me. It's about, have using that tool to make our communities better. It's using that tool to make, our family better. You know what I'm saying? So it's you can have the conversation together, but if we were to have to focus right now where we are today, and again, I don't want to negate the fact that we in our bags right now, right? Everybody's in their bags, but in that process, you're focusing on yourself, right? You're not helping somebody else, right? You're not teaming up with somebody else to help each other build, right? To create wealth. You're in your own bag, right? I don't agree with that. As important as it is to get, to get financially stable, and I'm not negating that aspect. It's important to have it. Again, it's a very again, needed tool for us to do the work, right? For us to be able to, build school, right? Build hospitals and clinics in our own communities, and but we have to start by educating our kids and teaching them, what, you don't have to aspire to be, a rapper. You can, if that's really your passion, but you can also, you can go to school, right? You don't have to aim for that fast money. You can take your time, learn something that's going to help all of us, right? To share a quick story, I may be going off tangent, but I wanted to be a singer because I wanted to make money quickly, right? I wanted to be in entertainment, which was part of the reasons I moved to New York City, to act and sing. It was a passion. Of course, I grew up singing, but my motive was money, right? So I wasn't in a space where I saw communities. I wasn't in a space where I saw helping others and creating something that was going to help others, but I saw me making money so I can get what I want. You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to change that mindset, where we can start creating, things and traditions that are going to help all of us. And for that to start, we have to, profoundly talk about generational health.
Uh,
You muted. You muted.
oh, sorry. That is a word. Generational health. It's definitely hit a chord um, here. Uh, in this group, I'm seeing the some of the comments that you can't see. Generational health really hit. it hit a chord with a lot of our moms. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's really important. Um, Mark, I want to continue this conversation. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but I think that there is an opportunity here. And ladies and men who are in here, please let me know how you feel about this. But I think that there's a lot more to be discussed here because I think that there are some things that we really need to break down and consider about if we are truly on this journey together as moms and as a community on how we can work on breaking this cycle of trauma
Right.
and how we can start creating um, this generational health with the idea that it will aid us in other areas
Right.
of our life,
Absolutely.
including wealth, including physical fitness, which is
Yes.
another area that we haven't even really touched on. Yes, I'm hearing some folks are asking for a part two here, so we'll have to talk about that. But yeah, I think that it does start with that. It does
Yeah.
start with the emotional health, and it does definitely um, touch onto other areas, and we want to dive into that. So I'm gonna end us today on that note. Before you leave us for today, because I'm getting requests for a part two.
Yeah.
Before you leave us for today, have you any words of wisdom, any more than you've already left us with, to share with our moms and our dads that are listening in?
Absolutely. I will speak as a son, as a father. Um, I as sons, we love our moms. We love our moms, and we want to protect our moms, and we want to provide for them, and we want them to definitely strive and succeed and be great. So what I would say, again, as a son who grew up partly, again, I grew up with my grandparents till I was 9, and then I moved in with my mom, who was a teenage mom. Um, I would encourage every mom to take time for you, right? Take time for your own healing process. Take time for your own restoration process. If you need to replenish, take time for that, because the healthier you are, the healthier your sons are gonna be, right? And be sure to model what you want them to attract when they get older, because to us, you are a reference point, right? We're looking at you, we're learning from you, and we're learning what it means to be, to be a woman. And we are pretty much, in spite of the fact that we have our own you know internal and innate standard, but we are, looking at you to decide and determine what a healthy and emotionally stable woman should be like. So definitely, as a son, I will say, take time for your own healing process, um, and definitely, cherish that. As a dad, I have a 5-year-old who's turning 25. Um, I recently I asked her, what would you say I can do that would make me the bestest dad in the whole world? She looks at me and said, um, actually nothing. I think you're already the best. Um, as great as that sounded, I think all of us can start that conversation, right, with our children, and pretty much create this team dynamic, right? This relationship where you have open communication, you have open dialogue, where you can truly understand each other, and help each other heal, right? Help each other grow, help each other evolve. I think that's one way we're gonna, break this cycle of generational pain and detrimental patterns, and move forward in a way that's going to help future generations, and even
Right.
this generation, even us as parents. I think having that line of, open line of communication with our children, we can definitely have a deeper connection. And if there are any fathers in the in um, the room listening, definitely, you are your son's role model, right? You are who they looking at and what aspire to be when they get older. And if you feel like you're not that person you would want your sons to be, I would say definitely, look at yourself, take accountability for, what you need to change and how you need to grow and become healthier for your sons and daughters. And and if you have daughters like myself, um, I wanted to be the type of man that, she wanted to attract when she get older. So I decided to work on me. I decided to change me, right? I decided to look at my own, detrimental habits and patterns and what I was doing wrong and how I was hurting people and how I was hurting myself and how those things were going to hurt her. So I decided to embark on my own healing journey, on my own, self-understanding journey in order to help her have, a healthier, more stable, psychological upbringing. So I think it's important as parents, we have such, I don't even know what to call it because of how important it is to be a parent. We are responsible to raise somebody, to guide someone. We are literally responsible to either raise someone to be an asset to society, or, you know, a detrimental human being to their community. So I think
Right.
we as parents, we have to look at it that way, and we have to take into consideration how important that job is, how important it is that we are, healthy ourselves and able to, become able to raise healthy individuals.
Yes. Mark, thank you so much. Yeah, it is really important for us to, yes, continue to be strong women, um, and hope that we can encourage our men, not to be, fed up, but to continue to thrive, and so that together we can ensure that our sons are not defeated and our daughters are not broken. So thank you so much for bringing this book to our into our world. We look to continue the conversation. It's been a great one. Our moms appreciate you. I appreciate you, and that with that, I'm going to wish you a wonderful weekend. And
Thank
again,
you.
a happy early Father's Day.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thank you.